What's going on, everyone? Today we are talking running backs that are skyrocketing up underdog boards. Guys like Nick Chubb, guys like Jerome Ford, guys like Tony Pollard. Either way, before we get into it, if you guys could, go down and drop a like on this video. I'm answering every single comment. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know. And subscribe to the channel. It is the #1 way to support me. It's completely free, and you could always change your mind later. With that though, guys, let's hop right into it with our first player, and that is Nick Chubb. Oh, and Jerome Ford.
Hand off to Chubb. Chubb through the left side, inside the 20. Chubb's got the 10, 5, touchdown!
So I kind of wanted to talk about Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford in the same segment. I mean, both of these guys are on the same team, and both of these guys pretty much have the same case. But I'll start with Nick Chubb here as the prime example. I mean, first, I will start with this depth chart. I mean, this depth chart is absolutely desolate. I mean, we're talking about Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, and that is absolutely it. I mean, they let Kareem Hunt walk this offseason and brought nobody in to take his place, nobody in to take his carries, nobody in to take his receptions. And he actually had a fair amount of work over the past 3 seasons in this offense, having over 100 total touches each of the last 3 seasons, which is pretty substantial. But either way, Nick Chubb is coming into this offense all alone with one of the most efficient offensive lines in the entire NFL. I mean, this offensive line currently ranks 2nd according to Pro Football Network, and it shows in Nick Chubb's stats. I mean, Nick Chubb has been just about one of the most efficient running backs in the entire NFL, as he's never averaged below 5 yards a carry on any season. I mean, even just last season, he finishes with over 5 yards a carry at 5.1 yards a carry, which is absolutely spectacular production from the position. Not only that, we have Deshaun Watson coming in, and Deshaun Watson could be phenomenal for this offense. I mean, right now, we really just don't know, but every single season of his career that he's played a full season, he has been a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And yes, there are a ton of question marks. I'm not saying Deshaun Watson will be a great quarterback. I'm saying Deshaun Watson could be a great quarterback yet again. And if that is the case, that totally justifies Nick Chubb's price point as the running back 5. And I just want to take a minute to talk about how substantial Nick Chubb's jump has been. I mean, this was somebody who went from the running back 7 to the running back 5. And while that may not sound like a lot, when you were jumping 4 spots in the 2nd or 3rd round, that is very substantial. I mean, it is significantly more substantial than a running back going from, let's say, the running back 35 to the running back 30. So Nick Chubb has been skyrocketing up these rankings. And quite honestly, it's not really hard to see why. I think it is totally justified with the efficiency that Nick Chubb has had over the past few seasons, with the O-line being nothing short of spectacular, with Deshaun Watson potentially leading this offense to greatness. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. And you can make the same case for Jerome Ford minus the efficiency we've seen. I mean, Jerome Ford is somebody who's almost never played football at the NFL level. I mean, last season he had 9 carries for 12 total yards. I mean, this is not somebody who we've seen be great, but if Nick Chubb were to go down, Jerome Ford would be controlling a vast majority of the snaps in this offense, and that's why we've seen his ADP rise from around the 190s to now, as I'm recording this video, around the 160s. I mean, I was in a draft today and I saw him go at pick 159. And yes, he is a great backup running back, but I don't really understand the philosophy behind this one as much. I think there are better, more talented running backs that you can get even later in these drafts. Guys like Joshua Kelly going in the very last round, who I would personally almost rather have than Jerome Ford. But again, I do understand the hype behind Jerome Ford. I mean, this is somebody who, if Nick Chubb goes down, will be controlling a majority of the snaps here. But I'm not as willing to buy into Jerome Ford as I think some other people are. Either way, let's move on to my next running back, and that is Joe Mixon.
Mixon right there, sample the block. They also got a Hopkins block, and there goes Mixon.
And so Joe Mixon has been another one of these guys that have been absolutely rising up these boards. I mean, when Underdog started out, he was going at an ADP of around 70. Now has skyrocketed to low 50s ADP. I believe right now his ADP is 53 as of the time I'm making this video, and I totally understand why. I mean, this is somebody who has finished as a top 10 running back in multiple seasons, with his peak being 2 years ago where he finished as the running back 3 in all of fantasy football. This is somebody who was utilized very heavily last season in the receiving game department, which I think bodes very, very well for Joe Mixon long term. Although he wasn't that efficient with his receptions, only garnering 440 yards on 60 total receptions. Not only that, this is somebody with a case similar to Nick Chubb, where this depth chart is absolutely terrible. I mean, we're talking Travion Williams, Chris Evans, and Chase Brown taking over the reins as the running back 2 here. And none of these guys are probably going to be vying for serious volume. Yes, I think they are all worth roster spots in Dynasty in deeper leagues, but at the same time, none of these guys are really serious considerations to take volume away. I mean, all of these guys are 5th, 6th, 4th round picks in the NFL, so I'm really not too worried about these guys sapping volume from Joe Mixon if Joe Mixon is healthy. Now, let's dive in a little bit deeper into his game logs last year, because although he was the running back 13 in all of fantasy football, for many Joe Mixon owners, it did not feel like it at all. I mean, this was somebody who would go out there and consistently drop 7 points, 8 points, 10 points on any given week, but he has 1 week to salvage his fantasy season where he has 50 total fantasy points, which was just downright crazy. But other than that, you really felt how bad Joe Mixon was last season. And for anyone that watched the Bengals, Joe Mixon was downright terrible. And I'm not saying it's going to get better for Joe Mixon, but at the same time, if you are getting a guy who could have 300 total touches this next season in an offense as loaded as the Bengals, I am absolutely fine taking a shot here on Joe Mixon simply due to the fact that he's going to be getting a ton of volume. And those boom weeks for Joe Mixon are 30 points, 40 points, even 50 points as we saw last season. Not only that, this O-line has been improving. As of right now, Pro Football Network ranks them as the 13th best offensive line in the NFL, which yes, it still has problems, that is for sure. But at 13, that is absolutely fine by me. I'm fine taking a risk on it, especially when you're in an offense with Ja'Marr Chase, with T. Higgins, with Joe Burrow, where they're going to be able to spread the field so much for Joe Mixon and give Joe Mixon opportunities that other running backs simply are not going to be able to have. Not only that, they let Samaje Perine walk and have not brought in anyone aside from Chase Brown in its place. Again, Chase Brown, a 5th round pick. Maybe they would have taken Zach Charbonnet and cut Joe Mixon, but we'll never know at this current point. I mean, the Bengals just simply did not end up getting him. So either way, to sum up the case on Joe Mixon, this is going to be a guy who could have over 300 total touches in an electric offense with an improving offensive line, and an offense that historically has wanted to run the ball a lot. I mean, in these Zach Taylor-led offenses, we've seen Joe Mixon thrive as of 2 years ago, and even last year. Again, being the running back 13, that is absolutely fine. Although it didn't feel like it for most fantasy owners, he could easily go back to his running back 5, running back 6 ways with this depth chart being absolutely clear. So that's why I'm drafting Joe Mixon a good amount where he's going right now. Either way, let's move on to my next player, and that is Tony Pollard.
Pollard, right up the middle, Tony Pollard, breaking free, Pollard, cuts back, Pollard, all the way, touchdown Dallas.
And so if you want an explosive running back, Tony Pollard is your guy. I mean, just watch this clip right here. Tony Pollard is one of the most explosive running backs in the NFL. Kind of reminds me of Saquon Barkley in his rookie season. And I'm not saying he's as talented as Saquon Barkley, but somebody that can take a football to the house on any given play. And in these underdog formats where taking balls to the house and having 30, 40-point weeks can oftentimes win you way more money, that's what matters to a lot of these fantasy managers, and that's why we've seen Tony Pollard skyrocket up from around the running back 12 to now the running back 7 over in underdog fantasy drafts. I mean, this is somebody who was downright explosive and potentially a league winner last season, finishing as the running back 2 from weeks 10 to 16. And I know that kind of sounds like a weird sample size, but he was hampered a little bit with a lingering injury in week 17, weeks 18, and the Dallas Cowboys were already going to make the playoffs, so they didn't really give him all that much playtime. But at the same time, Tony Pollard is somebody stepping into this offense where now, again, he is all alone. It's Tony Pollard, it's Deuce Vaughn, it's Malik Davis. There really is no name to compete for serious volume with Tony Pollard, and I think that shows with his fantasy ADP as of right now. Not only that, he's stepping into an offense with a phenomenal offensive line. I mean, this Cowboys offensive line has consistently ranked in the top 10 every single season. This year, according to Pro Football Network, it ranks as the number 5 offensive line in all of football. So Tony Pollard's in an electric offense, an offense that wants to run the ball down your throat, as last season they ranked 5th in rush rate in the entire NFL, which is a very indicative metric that they want to run the football. Not only that, they promote Brian Schottenheimer to offensive coordinator, somebody who historically has wanted to run the ball down your throat. They're in an electric offense with Dak Prescott, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got Brandon Cooks. I mean, there are so many weapons to spread the field in this offense. As a Giants fan, I'm pretty worried about Tony Pollard. I think he's going to explode this season. And quite honestly, I think you can make the case that Tony Pollard's ADP is a bit low for where he is right now. I mean, this is somebody in elite elite offense with no depth at the running back position. This is somebody who historically has ran the ball with efficiency, as over the last 2 seasons he's finished with over 5 yards a carry. So I think Tony Pollard might be a bargain bin buy at the end of the second, early third round, but at the same time, we've never really seen him do it over the course of a full season, so I understand the gripe. But even just last season, finishing as the running back 7, despite having Ezekiel Elliott getting 10 plus touchdowns in this offense, I think is phenomenal for Tony Pollard. Not only that, he's pretty decently utilized in the receiving game. I mean, this is somebody who's had 39 receptions each of the last 2 seasons, 55 targets last season, and again, with Ezekiel Elliott out of this offense, I think Tony Pollard could be in line to receive a little bit more receiving down workload. I mean, I don't really see him ever cracking the Austin Eckler's 120 plus targets, but if he gets 70 targets in this offense, I think that is absolutely fine for his production. Either way, let's move on to my last player, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs.
Touchdown, Alabama! Jahmyr Gibbs, what a play!
And Jahmyr Gibbs is somebody that I am extremely high on this season. I'm a little sad to see that he's been rising in drafts because honestly, when he was going in the 50s, the 60s, I was drafting him just about everywhere. Now he's going in the mid-30s around guys like Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and it makes a lot more sense for his ADP. I think there is a lot to like about Jahmyr Gibbs this season. I mean, for one, he's coming into one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, Pro Football Network ranking them as the 3rd best offensive line. He's coming into that DeAndre Swift-like role, but should get more work in the rushing game. And DeAndre Swift, despite their heavy reluctance to use him, still garnered 78 and 70 targets over the last 2 seasons, despite being injured for part of the season and missing 3 and 4 games apiece each of the last 2 seasons. So we should see Jahmyr Gibbs easily clear 70 targets. We could even see Jahmyr Gibbs clear 100 targets. And if you are getting 100 targets in an offense that could be as explosive as the Lions with a great offensive line, I am absolutely fine taking Jahmyr Gibbs where he is going right now. As this is someone the Lions took 12th overall, and historically, these running backs that go top 15 have been great for fantasy football. I mean, we're talking about Saquon Barkley finishing as the running back 1 in his rookie season, Ezekiel Elliott finishing as the running back 2 in his rookie season. Yes, there are some running backs that have not done as great, but the floor I can see, aside from Melvin Gordon, is Todd Gurley finishing as the running back 15, is Christian McCaffrey also finishing as the running back 15, and that's where he is going right now in the middle of the 4th round. We know historically these rookie running backs come out and they dominate almost right away. And aside from the worry of David Montgomery stealing some of the goal line volume, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute steal. I mean, this is a guy the Lions celebrated heavily for when they drafted him. You can check out this clip right over here. And I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute steal where he's going right now. Again, somebody who could have over 100 targets, somebody who could receive over 150 rush attempts this season, and somebody who is in one of the perfect offenses for him. I mean, we've seen how Jared Goff has supported running backs in years past. I mean, even just last year, Jamal Williams finishing as the running back 8 in all of fantasy football. We've seen great seasons from DeAndre Swift as well, and of course, the Todd Gurley years. He was simply phenomenal, one of the best running backs in all football. Well, Todd Gurley is most likely a more talented running back than Jahmyr Gibbs. We could see Jahmyr Gibbs finish as a top 5 running back this season, and I don't think anyone would be all that surprised. Either way, that's going to be it from me. If you want to see a video on wide receivers that have been skyrocketing up boards, you can check that out right over here. Be sure to give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know and subscribe to the channel. Yet again, it is the #1 way to support me. It's completely free. It would mean the absolute world to me, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.